Hey everyone, welcome to LegendLearn. My name is Raghav from FTC Team Legend 21227, and in this video, we're going to be talking about grant writing for FTC teams. More specifically on what to focus on, what to avoid, and how to give yourself the best shot. So for some quick credibility, as a new outreach member in my first season of FTC, I won a $500 PTC grant on our first ever application. I didn't have any experience in FTC, but I did have a decent amount of prior grant experience. What I did have, though, was a clear story, a smart approach, and that's what we want to pass on to you guys. So what even is grant writing? Grant writing is basically explaining your team, your mission, your impact, and your future to an organization that wants to support STEM education. This can be a direct FTC, FLL, FRC type of grant, or from an external STEM organization. These organizations aren't just giving away money. They're choosing teams they believe will turn that money into real impact. And that's important because grants don't just fund robots. They fund outreach, sustainability, and opportunities for students who might not otherwise get them. So now, before you start writing anything, one mistake teams make is jumping straight into typing answers. Before you write a single sentence, take a step back and think, who's offering this grant? What do they care about? Why does their mission overlap with FTC? If it's not a direct FTC grant, many STEM grants will care about education, accessibility, and community impact. If you really understand why these criteria exist, trust me, your answers will sound naturally stronger. Now let's move on how to start writing grants. When you're applying for grants, it's really tempting to reuse the same answers over and over again. And while you can keep a general structure, you should always customize your responses by emphasizing the parts of your team that align best with that grant, slightly adjusting your story depending on the audience, and also avoid copy-pasting language that sounds too robotic. What you can also do is do research on what topics the organization is passionate about and tying that into your application. Something to remember is that reviewers can actually tell when an application was rushed and when it was written intentionally. So now let's move on to the core of every strong grant. It's your team story. Here's the most important part of the entire video. Grants are won through stories and not stats. Yes, the achievements do matter, but context matters even more. Instead of just listing what you've done, try to explain where your team started, what challenges you faced, how FTC helped you grow, and how that growth extended beyond the robot. This will elevate your responses. Answering common grant questions effectively. Most grants ask similar questions, just worded differently. For example, what does your team do? How has FTC impacted your members? How do you serve your community? How will you use the funds? These are simple questions, but you should treat these like connected pieces and not individual parts. Each answer should reinforce the same message that your team is thoughtful, growing, and intentional. Now let's move on to an example we tackled on the PTC grant that we won. To summarize, the question was, how are new members brought in and introduced to FTC and the team in general? When responding to this question, I brainstormed for a bit, but then came to a very obvious example. I was a new member, so talking about my own experience in my own opinion would be the strongest example. So I began by talking about how my experience was at my first ever FTC competition, which was the Lobster Cup. I talked about how I felt interested and excited to contribute after that experience and the team's kindness by giving me a Legend t-shirt. Next, let's move on how to talk about using the money. In the case a grant asks how you'll use the money, they're not looking for an exact shopping list. They really want to know, are you responsible, do you plan ahead, and will this funding actually make a difference? It's much stronger to say, this grant will help us improve robot reliability and expand outreach opportunities and keep us sustainable, than to just list 10 random parts. This shows that their money enables impact and not just purchases, and it makes your team more self-sustainable. You'll hear people say, apply to every grant you can, but this is just not true. A few strong, well-aligned applications will always be a bunch of rushed ones. Prioritize grants that support FIRST or STEM education, match your team's values, and give you enough space to actually explain your impact. So the brutal truth is, not every application will win. We won the PTC grant through a compelling story and being smart with our responses. But there's always the off chance that you may not win, even if you think you had the best responses. And this doesn't mean your team failed. It usually means there was high competition, there might have been limited funding, or slightly different priorities. Every application you write makes the next one better. And grant writing is a skill, and just like any other FTC skill, you'll improve it with iteration and practice. So to wrap things up, be honest, be reflective, focus on your growth, not just accomplishments, and don't undersell your team. It's common knowledge that FTC teams do incredible things, and grant writing is just learning how to communicate that effectively. Good luck, and we hope this helps your team take that next step. Peace out, LegendLearn.